Namaste students. Today we will learn the fourth chapter of your honeycomb textbook called The Ashes That Made Trees Bloom. Before beginning, I want to give a quick introduction of the chapter. So this story is an adapted version of a Japanese story. This story depicts a very emotional bond between humans and animals. Here in this story, we will come across the idea where it is shown that the relation between humans and animals cannot be broken even after death. However, there are a few people whose selfish attempts tries to cause pain between their relationship. So let us begin. In the good old days of Daimyo, there lived an old couple whose only pet was a little dog. Having no children, they loved it as though it were a baby. The old dame made it a cushion out of blue crepe, and at mealtime, Muko, for that was its name, would sit on it as snug as any cat. The kind people fed the pet with tidbits of fish from their own chopsticks, and all the boiled rice it wanted. Thus treated, the dumb creature loved its protectors like a being with a soul. So, during the olden days of the feudal lords, there was an old couple with a pet dog. The pet dog's name was Muko. So, they treated the dog like their own child, like their own baby. Okay, and the kind old woman, she made a cushion out of light cotton fabric, and Muko used to sleep on that cushion cozily, okay, like a cat. And they loved their dogs so much that they fed their dogs with their own chopsticks. Okay, as you can see in that picture, these are chopsticks. Okay, with their own chopsticks, the old couple used to feed the dog with tidbits of fish. Tidbits of fish means with pieces of fish, okay, and boiled rice. And that is why the dumb creature loved the old couple also. Understood? The old man, being a rice farmer, went daily with hoe or spade into the fields, working hard from morning until Otento Sama, as the sun is called, had gone down behind the hills. Every day the dog followed him to work, never once harming the white heron that walked in the footsteps of the old man to pick up the worms. For the old fellow was patient and very kind to everything that had life, and often turned up a sod on purpose to give food to the birds. So, this old man was a farmer, and he went daily into the field with his hoe or a spade, and he worked in the field from morning till the sun set down. Okay. And Muko, he always followed him to the field. The dog never harmed or went after any animals or birds in the field, not even the white heron. White heron is a kind of a fish-eating bird with long legs. Okay. And this old man, he was very patient and kind towards everything, he was an animal lover, we can say, and so he sometimes purposefully gives food to the birds in the field. One day the dog came running to him, putting his paws against his legs and motioning with his head to some spot behind. The old man at first thought his pet was only playing and did not mind it, but the dog kept on whining and running to and fro for some minutes. Then the old man followed the dog a few yards to a place where the animal began a lively scratching. Thinking it was possibly a buried bone or a bit of fish, the old man struck his hoe in the earth, when, lo, a pile of gold gleamed before him. So what happened? One day the dog took the old man to a spot and began scratching the earth. Okay. At first the old man didn't pay much attention to it, but the dog kept on whining and moving around the spot. So the old man got suspicious and he dug up the particular spot. Okay. Do you know what he found? He found a pile of shining gold inside the earth. Just in an hour, the old couple were made rich. The good old souls bought a piece of land, made a feast for their friends, and gave plentifully to their poor neighbors. As for the dog, they petted him till they nearly smothered him with kindness. Now, in the same village there lived a wicked old man and his wife, not a bit sensitive and kind, who had always kicked and scolded all dogs whenever any passed their house. Hearing of their neighbors' good luck, they coaxed the dog into their garden and set before him bits of fish and other dainties, hoping he would find treasure for them. But the dog, being afraid of the cruel pair, would never eat nor move. So what happened? In an hour, this old couple, they became rich. And they bought a piece of land, organized a feast for their friends, and gave plentiful food to their poor neighbors. They loved their dog even more. Now, in that very same village, there was another couple who were very greedy and selfish. They were very cruel to animals, and when they got to hear about the news of the gold, they convinced the dog with pleasant words. They convinced Muko into their garden and offered him food, but the dog didn't respond to them. He neither ate nor moved. Then they dragged him out of doors, taking a spade and hoe with them. No sooner had the dog got near a pine tree growing in the garden than he began to paw and scratch the ground as if a mighty treasure lay beneath. "Quick, wife, hand me the spade and hoe," cried the greedy old fool as he danced with joy. Then the covetous old fellow with a spade and the old crone with a hoe began to dig, but there was nothing but a dead kitten, the smell of which made them drop their tools and shut their noses. Furious at the dog, the old man kicked and beat him to death, and the old woman finished the work by nearly chopping off his head with the sharp hoe. Then they flung him into the hole and heaped the earth over his carcass. So what happened when the dog didn't respond to that wicked old man and woman? They dragged him out of the doors. And also carried a spade and a hoe with them. And then Muko began scratching the ground near a pine tree. The evil old couple, they thought that the dog might have sensed some treasure inside the ground, and they were very happy. They began digging the ground. But what they found instead? They found a dead kitten. There were no treasure, but they found a dead kitten. And this evil couple, they became so furious at the dog that they killed the dog instantly, and they flung him inside the hole and covered the dead dog with the soil. The owner of the dog heard of the death of his pet and mourning for him as if he had been his own child, went at night under the pine tree. He set up some bamboo tubes in the ground, such as are used before tombs, in which he put some fresh flowers. Then he laid a cup of water and a tray of food on the ground, and burned several costly sticks of incense. He mourned a great while over his pet, calling him many dear names as if he were alive. So what happened? The owner heard the news of the dearest dog that it was dead, and so he went to the spot, and gathered some bamboo sticks and made a grave for Muko at that particular spot. So what he did, he put fresh flour on the grave, he put cup of water, a tray of food, and burned incense sticks and mourned for that dog as if it was his own child. That night the spirit of the dog appeared to him in a dream and said, "Cut down the pine tree over my grave and make from it a mortar for your rice pastry and mill for your bean sauce." So, first of all, let us know what a mortar is. A mortar is used to pound rice. This is a mortar, and mill is used to grind beans. So, now here bean sauce is a kind of Japanese side dish, we can say, where bean of a particular kind is grind to make a paste out of it to be eaten with rice pastry. So what happened that particular night of the dog's death, the old man, he dreamt about the dog's spirit, okay, and the dog in his dream told him to cut down the pine tree over his grave and make a mortar for the rice pastry and a meal for his bean sauce. So the old man chopped down the tree and cut out of the middle of the trunk a section about 2 feet long. With great labor, partly by fire and partly by chisel, he scraped out a hollow place as big as a small bowl. He then made a long-handled hammer of wood, such as is used for pounding rice. When New Year's time drew, he wished to make some rice pastry. When the rice was all boiled, Granny put it into the mortar. The old man lifted his hammer to put the mass into dough, and the blows fell heavy and fast till the pastry was all ready for baking. Suddenly the whole mass turned into a heap of coals. When the old woman took the hand mill and filling it with beans began to grind, the coal dropped like rain. So what happened? As told by the spirit of the dog, the old man, he went towards the grave. He cut down the pine tree with great labor and made a mortar and a mill out of it. Okay. Then when New Year's time drew, he wished to make a rice pastry. So he boiled the rice and he put it into the mortar. And when the old man, he lifted his wooden hammer that he made it from the pine tree to pound the mass into dough. So in a blink, the mass turned into a heap of coals. And when the old woman filled the hand mill with beans to grind, so the coal dropped like rain, as if it was rain of gold. So again they became very rich. Meanwhile, the envious neighbor peeped in at the window with the boiled beans were being ground. "Goody me!" cried the old hag, as she saw each dripping of sauce turning into yellow gold, until in a few minutes the tub under the mill was full of shining mass of gold. So the old couple were rich again. The next day the stingy and wicked neighbor came and borrowed the mortar and magic mill. They filled one with boiled rice and the other with beans. Then the old man began to pound and the woman to grind. But at the first blow and turn, the pastry and the sauce turned into foul mass of worms. Still more angry at this, they chopped the meal into pieces to use as firewood. So what happened? So meanwhile, the wicked neighbor were watching everything from the window, and the next day what they did, they borrowed the mortar and the magic mill from them. And when they filled it with boiled rice and beans, with the first blow, what happened? Their mass turned into worms. Instead of turning into gold, it turned into worms. Okay, and they were really angry with it. Okay, and they broke down the hand mill and the mortar to make to use it as firewood. So why they borrowed the mill and the mortar from the good old man and woman? Because they thought that they would also become rich. This was an easy step of becoming rich, and that is why with that intention they thought to borrow the mill and the mortar. But when they tried to do the same thing like them, it did not happen. The magic did not happen with them. In fact, they got worms everywhere. Okay, they did not get any gold. In fact, they got worms, and that is why they broke the mortar and the mill. So this is the end of the first part of this chapter. Thank you.